I was associated with him for a long, long time. And I met him first in the early 90s after the VP Singh government fell. And Pranab Mukherjee was not then in the Congress party. And I, Lalit Hussain, and he used to meet often at the Belvedere to discuss politics. And of course, he was very, very keen to get back into the Congress party. And we gave our views on the subject as well. So it's since the early 90s that I was associated with him. And of course, then when we were part of the opposition, when I was in Rajya Sabha, he was in Rajya Sabha, therefore he was the leader of the opposition. And, he was a great believer in constitutional values. He would always, in our house meetings, when we had to charter the course of our strategy in the house, he would always say that, look, I don't like people getting into the well of the house. There's nothing better than a debate in Parliament. And we must contribute in that debate. That's the only way that Parliament must function. So he was a great parliamentarian in that sense. The other great attribute, personal attribute that he had was he had an elephant's memory, his wealth of knowledge of politics, about elections, about wonderful anecdotes about people, because, he strode the political firmament for decades. Having been elected for the first time in the West Bengal Assembly. At that time, of course, he was not in the Congress party. Then, of course, when we were in government, he was heading many groups of ministers. And he always, his stamp of authority really carried every decision that the UPA made, whether it was UPA 1 or UPA 2. I had great admiration for him because he threw light on issues that we were completely ignorant about. And at a personal level, it was exceptionally friendly. I remember spending great evenings with him. He would ring me up. He would ring up Ahmed Bhai. Two of us go to him after dinner. He would serve us with coffee and toast. And we would have long chats because he was a cerebral human being. He loved academic discussion. So I had a great rapport with him.
Yes.
What can I say? I think that his contribution to the Congress party will be written in golden letters when the history of the Congress party is written during these years. His contribution to the nation, to parliamentary democracy, will be written in golden letters. His clarity of thought and clarity of purpose was something that I always admired. And I have a personal equation with him because he inducted me into the Congress party. The first time I entered the AICC is when he made me a member of the Congress party. So for me, it's a great personal loss for the Congress party. And of course, the whole nation mourns him today. May his soul rest in peace.
There was an occasion, there was a certain period when, there was talk about whether he should have become the Prime Minister of the country. Could you tell us about that period and what must have been going on in his mind?
Well, you must remember that when Manmohan Singh ji was in the government, not as Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh served under him. So I think there was that element. He certainly would have liked to be Prime Minister. But I think that, I don't think he regretted it. And he gave great respect to Dr. Manmohan Singh, during cabinet meetings and even otherwise.
Yeah.
And he served him as faithfully as any honorable soldier would do, as a member of the Congress party and as a member of the government. Yeah. But then, of course, he became president of India. Yes. I think that was a signal achievement.
Yeah. And
having achieved the highest office.
Were you uncomfortable, Mr. Sibal, when he went to the RSS headquarters not too long ago? He had close relations with people across political lines, perhaps more close than some in the Congress would have felt comfortable with.
But you must remember, his journey in politics was not a journey only in the Congress party. Of course, he served almost every Congress prime minister, in all Congress governments. But he had connections across political parties because he had dealt with them at some time or the other. uh, that he went to the RSS and all that is, yes, I mean, that's something that people were, but then he was an enigmatic person. I mean, he was his own person. He took his own decisions. Um, so when you look back at the contribution of a great, of a person who has served the nation in the various capacities that he did, I think this little blip should not in any way discredit the enormous contribution that he made to India as a nation, to the Congress Party, and to government and administration.
All
so
right,
I think that I don't think we should even talk about,
sure,
because people have different points of view on this issue, But I think in the context of this great man,
yes,
I think that's an irrelevant fact.